everybody, welcome to Stitch with Rick. Today you have decided that you're gonna make a quilt and you're a beginner. So for beginners, here we go. When you're making a quilt, 4 things you're gonna do. You're gonna pick out your fabric. You're gonna cut your fabric. You're gonna sew your fabric, and you're gonna press your fabric with the iron. Okay? So first things first, let's decide what we're gonna make. What we're gonna make is just a 8-panel squares, and we're going to prep it. Okay? So that's our finished result. What you want to do when you start quilting, there's different kinds of quilters, okay? There's quilters that match up their points, and if you look here, you'll see my points match. They're not off at all on there, okay? So let's talk about that first. There's 2 different types of quilters. There's quilters that want their points exact, no error in it, just right on the money, point to point, edge to edge. Then there's quilters that say, a little bit off, it's okay. A smidge off here, it's okay, we'll make it work. Okay, I'm not that type, excuse me. I like my points to be points. Example, back here, this quilt back here, my points match on my points when I make the quilt, okay? It's okay if you don't care about it that much. It's just up to you, whichever you decide you're gonna be, okay? So let's start. All right, so what we had is that 1 panel. It's got 8 blocks in it. I used black and white so we could see the contrasts, okay? So what we're gonna do is I've already got some fabric. I have got my black fabric here, and I've got white also. So we're gonna lay this down on our cutting table. And then on the cutting table, we're gonna take our ruler let's go back to that. Look back at me. Look at me. Okay. Things that we need. Fabric, ruler. This is 1 ruler. It is 24 inches long by 6 inches wide. Okay, that's 1. There's all different types of ruler. Here's a smaller one, which is 10 inches tall and 6 inches wide also. Excuse me, 5 inches wide. Okay? I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to use this big one. All right, so now let's go back to the cutting table. All right, so what you want to do first, when you get your material, you have the folded edge towards you here. You want to make sure you have a straight edge. So I just put it right on the edge. And if you see here, we have a little less here and more here. I'm lining the bottom of the ruler up with the fold on the fabric. Okay? And your selvages are up here. Selvage is where we're not going to use this. We're going to cut it off. Okay? So we're going to cut a straight edge. So now we have a straight edge on one side. Now, like I said, we are going to do a 5.5 inch block. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to move it over to 5.5 inches. Right on the money. Right on the 5.5. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. And we're going to cut that. Okay. So that's our cut. We have put our scraps over there. Okay, now that we have our 5.5 inch cut, what we're going to do is, here's our strip. It's 5.5 inches from the top here down to the bottom down there. Okay, now what we want to do is since we want 5.5 inch squares, and the reason we're cutting at 5.5 inch squares because I want a 5 inch square when we're done. Okay. So in order to get a 5 inch square when you're done, we're using a 1/4 inch seam all the way around when we're sewing when we quilt. Okay. Garments, they use 5/8 seams. Quilting, we're going to use 1/4 inch seam. Okay. So when you look back down at the fabric, we're going to move our ruler right past the edge, and we're going to cut that selvage off. See the selvage right there? That we don't want. Filing that. Now we're going to move our ruler over again to the 5.5 inch mark and make sure we have our ruler straight. And we need 4 of the black blocks. Okay? So right now we have the fabric doubled, so we're going to cut once, and we're going to make 2 5.5-inch squares. And we're going to do again, and we're going to line our ruler up. Make sure I put my head in there. All right. So again, 5.5-inch square. Okay. So now we have our 4 pieces of black material. Okay. So all the black material we're going to set aside. Okay, I'm standing up. You can't see my head. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's our blacks. Now we're going to take our white fabric. Let's see, I have my white fabric here. Now usually you have a bigger piece, but I just did this for demonstration purposes only. All right, now we're going to cut the white material down here. Okay, and again, I have the fold down at the bottom, and I'm lining my line up on that so I can get a straight edge on the edge of the fabric to start with. Okay, so there. We have the straight edge on the end. Now we're going to move our ruler over to the 5.5. Okay, so now we're 5.5. Okay. Put our extra away, out of the way. And now we're going to turn this fabric again also. Okay, and we're going to do our 5.5-inch squares again. Remember, we had selvage over here, so we want to cut that off. All right, so we are going to measure that off. Got it nice and straight. Make sure your blocks are straight. Cut that off. Okay, and we're going to move our ruler over. So we got 5.5 under the ruler. Okay, so now we're going to cut that. All righty. So that's a set of 5.5 inches. We got to get one more set of 5.5 inches. There we go. Okay. All right, so now we have the 4 white, 4 black. Okay? Now, we've done the cutting. Now, we're going to do the sewing. Okay? And then when we sew these together, I'm going to put you down on the bottom again there. We have our black square, and you have the black, which is the right side. Okay? And on the other side, you can see that it's not the pure black. So that's the back of the fabric. This is the front of the fabric. So that's the right side, wrong side. Okay? So we're going to put the right side up, and we're going to put right sides up of the white. We're going to put the right, we're going to put the right side facing the right side. So that covers it up. All right? Now we're going to line them up perfectly. Okay? So now we have the 2 black square and the white square together. So after we have it together, we're going to take our little sandwich here, and we're going to sew on the edge, and we're going to go 1/4 inch in. Okay? Now, on my machine, I have a 1/4 inch foot. Okay? So the 1/4 inch foot looks like that. And if you can see it over on this side, the opposite side, there's a little flange. And that keeps me going at the 1/4 inch seam, so I don't slide it over. Okay? Put this back on my machine. Okay? And then what we're going to do is we're just going to sew. Okay? So we're going to take this, and let's put you down on the machine so you can see. Okay? We're going to take our black and white fabric. You can see there, that's the wrong side. That's the wrong side. Inside, we have the right side. Move over the right side and the right side. Okay, and we put those together, and we are just going to do 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so we have our foot on. Everything is good. And we're going to just slowly take it. Take your time. There's no need to rush. Slow and steady wins the race. As you get better, you'll go faster. Okay, so that was one. Okay, so now we finished sewing that one piece of fabric. So after we've sewn the one, we're not going to cut the threads. We're not going to do anything like that. We're going to leave those two attached to the machine, okay, and the threads. And we're going to take our second one. We take our second block, right side up, and on the white, right side down. So now we have the right sides together again, and we've got them lined up exactly where we wanted it, okay? And then again, we're going to take it right to that foot and lower it, and I'll show you here, right here, is that guide I was talking about that's on my foot. And then my 1/4 inch seam is from the needle over to the edge, okay? So we're going to make sure we're right up against that edge, and we're going to sew that one, okay? And down we go. Okay, and again, we're going to leave those two attached, okay? See that they're attached right there by the thread. What we're doing is called chain piecing. So when you have a whole bunch of blocks that you want to just sew together and sew together and sew together, you can just keep on going until you get them all done. So let's do another one. We're going to go here. We're going to get them lined up again, right sides together, which I almost didn't do. Okay, so we're right sides together, put our presser foot down, and we're going to sew that again. Okay, so that's 2, 3, the third one, and we're going to grab the fourth one, and again, right sides up, right sides down. Okay, we'll go back down to the machine again so you can see what we're doing. And so we have it nice and even, lower the foot, and we're just going to sew that 1/4 inch seam. Okay, now we're done. Now we'll cut our threads and pull it out from the machine. Okay, so now what we have is like a little flag, okay? A little pendant flag. But we're not going to leave it like that, okay? So now we've chain pieced these together. One piece after another piece after another piece. Okay? Now, all we're going to do is we're going to cut those apart. All right? Okay. So now you have your one unit of the block complete. All right? Now, when I was talking about the 1/4 inch seams, you can check yourself either with a ruler or a guide, and I'm going to check mine, and my seams are 1/4 inch. So that means that when I put these together, they should all line up. Okay? So let's go ahead and do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chain them together. These two, so we got white, black, white, black. Okay, so we are going to put the black down here. We're going to put the white on there, so right sides together again. Okay, we'll go over here and we can see it better, I think. Okay, so you have the right sides together. Let's see, there's your black, there's your white. Got right sides there. It is lined up. If you can see, you really can't see into the black. And the white meets it, okay? So now, we're just going to sew these two together. Okay? Same thing, 1/4 inch seam. That's all you're going to do. 1/4 inch seams all the way through. Okay? So now that we've got the two of those done, so now we have 4. Forgot to bring you up here. Now we have 4, okay? Black, white, black, white. Now we're going to do the same thing with these two. put these together. Except this time, remember we did black, white, black, white. This time, we're going to go white, black, white, black. Okay? So we're going to, again, put these two together. And you want to have a 1/4 inch seam when you're doing it. So when you put it in your machine, you make sure that this is straight. Okay? And we'll drop our foot. And we will just sew that 1/4 inch seam. Nice and straight. Perfect. Okay, we'll cut that thread. Now from this point, scared you for a second, didn't I? Okay, now, hey, look here. We've got black and white squares. Okay? So if you notice, that's all good and well. We have our little checkerboard. We're good. Now, what you're going to want to have to do is you want these seams to nest together, okay? And before you iron them, you really can't nest them. So let me show you what we mean by nesting. So you're going to take your fabric. All right, so I have the one strip, and I'm just going to press it to in one direction, okay? So you can take your iron, and if I hold this up, hopefully you can see this. Let me slide in a little bit. Okay, if I hold this fabric up, if you can see it, the seam is laying down naturally that way. Okay, so I'm just going to press it. Just do a light press. We're good. Hold it up. That seam is going the same direction, and that seam is going the same direction. Okay, so now that we did that, and we have all of our seams going that way, the second one, which is going to be right here, since those seams are over here, excuse me, the seams are going that way, we want these seams to go that way. Okay? And in order to do that, we're going to hold the other side. And we're going to iron that down. Okay? Okay, so now, let's move this out of the way. Now let's take a look at it. Okay? So, we have our black and our white. Okay? The seams for here, this left side, my left side, the seam is folded over here, over here, over here. And on this one, the seams are on this side, over here and over here. So when we fold these together, you're gonna see, if I can get up there. See these seams? This seam is over to my right, and this one's over to my left. So when we put those together, they nest into each other and they kind of lock in there. I'll try to show you on the other angle. Okay, so when you have it like that, you'll see that there's no gap. The black meets to the black and the white meets to the white. Okay? So you're just going to do that all the way down. Now, pinning can be your friend. All right? So when you start, it's better to pin. And I would normally have my pins sitting right here, but they're over there. So I'm going to run and get those pins. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. We're almost done. Okay? So I've got my pins. And we are now going to pin this together. Okay? So we have already done, we've already matched up these seams. See our black and the white? If you can barely see that probably. and we're going to just make sure it's nested in there. Line it up perfectly straight. Pin it. Okay? Same thing with the next one. We're going to make sure it is snug up against that seam. You can feel it underneath there. Remember, it's called nesting. Okay? So we have that one. And the last one, we're going to pin this one. Now, down the road, you'll get to where you don't need to pin. But I suggest when you start, you should pin. Okay? It just makes it better for you. All right. Okay, so now that we've got it all pinned, you can see this is where our pins are. We're gonna just sew a 1/4 inch down that side, removing the pins as we get close to them. You do not want to sew over your pins. If you do, sometimes you make it, sometimes you hit them. If you hit them, it can break your needles, and you could go down there. The pins can get stuck. They can go down into your machine. You don't want to mess with that. So try to take your pins out instead of sewing over them. All right, let's go to the machine. Okay, so there we go. We have it all lined up. We're going to lower our presser foot. And if you're wondering why I'm not reaching under and everything, my machine, I'm using the knee controller that raises the foot and everything. Okay, so now we're just going to do this 1/4 inch seam all the way, and we're going to check and make sure that we're even. This whole line here is nice and even. I don't see any blackness right on the edge. It's a 1/4 inch. Okay, now I'm getting close to my pin, and I'm going to slide my pin out, put it over there. Continue on. Okay. All the way. Okay, looking good. Sorry about my arm there. Alright, I'm getting to the pin. I'm going to stop. I'm going to slide my pin out. Not move my material at all, though. Keep those lined up. Okay. Keep on going. And the more you practice, the better you get. You know, so if your first ones you don't come out exactly right, just keep on trying. It's not going to come out perfect on your first attempt. If it does, you go. All right. So there, and to the end, cut the thread. Oops, cut the thread. All right, so now we're done. We made that whole seam down there, 1/4 inch. Look how straight it is. See that line? 1/4 inch across here and a 1/4 inch down here. All right, then we're going to open it up. And let me look at it first to make sure. Oh, it's perfect. Okay, we open it up. And then we have our black and whites again. Okay, so now we're going to go over here and we're going to press it again. We're going to press it. You can hold up the one side. And hold up the one side. Okay. All right. So, now that we've got it pressed, look. Okay? It's a piece of cake. Really. I mean, and then, well, I have the other one I already made. What you could do is you can just take this one and you can sew it together. And your seams, again, okay, when I just laid it together like this, let me show you. So I just laid it together. Okay, right now, both my seams are towards the top, this way. That's okay. We just flip this around, and now we have a seam down and a seam up. Okay, then you can just sew that together and you can play checkers, you know? So, in a nutshell, that's the basics, okay? So, when you cut your fabric first, make sure you cut it to the size, okay? You don't want a little bit bigger, you don't want a little less. You want it the size you need it. So, like, if you want a 5-inch square, you're going to cut it at 5.5 inches. If you want a 6-inch square, 6.5. 2-inch square, 2.5. Because by the time you sew all the way around on all 4 sides, you're going to be down to 5 inches. When you start with 5.5, 6.5, you're going to end up with 6, 2.5, you end up with a 2. That's it. Okay, so you cut your material. You get it nice and straight. You are then going to sew your material together, right sides together. After you sew it, you're then going to press it. And then after you press it, you're going to figure out how many blocks you're going to put together, and you want to press those seams the opposite direction. Okay? So this side might be pressed up this way, this side must be pressed up that way. You put them together, they nest. And that's it. We'll be making some more videos with some basic squares, basic blocks, half square triangles, pinwheels, just a whole bunch of different blocks that you could put together and make a quilt with. That's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We will be posting videos a lot now. We've got a new camera system that allows me to switch from me to the sewing machine to the cutting table and back to me if I want. Piece of cake. That's it. Thanks a lot. We will see you next time.